get started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Salem Reporter Town Hall on the tax levy. My name is Les Zeitz. I'm the editor and co-founder of Salem Reporter, and I'll be your moderator this evening. You keep that up, we're going to be here all night. We're delighted that so many of you gave up a nice warm spring evening in Salem, a rarity on sometimes, to be here with us this evening. Also want to extend a welcome to our television audience. Capital Community Media is broadcasting live tonight, which is vital to getting the information out to the rest of the community. We expect and hope that you will find this evening to be informative and enlightening. The topic tonight, as if you don't know, is the City of Salem tax levy on your May ballot. Ballots will go out about April 30th. The last numbers that I checked, Salem has 92,860 people who can vote. Almost 100,000 people can have a say about the future of Salem. In November of 2023, the city at that time asked for the community support, and only 1/3, about 30,000 people, voted. I'm betting that we can do better than that. Your vote does count. We're here tonight with the mission of giving you facts. We're going to give them to you straight. We're going to give you unfiltered access to our panel of experts. The program will go like this. We'll have presentations by our panelists, who I'll introduce in just a moment. Then we'll have questions from the Salem Reporter staff. To my left, Managing Editor Rachel Alexander, and Joe Cease, who is our City Hall reporter. And then the fun part of the evening, we get to your questions. So as you came in, you had a chance to grab a card and a pencil to write your questions down. We have students from K High School's orchestra who are with us this evening to be runners. If you didn't get a card and through the evening you think of a question, just raise your hand and they'll get you a card. By the same token, if you have a question ready to turn in, raise your hand and we'll get those scooped up and finish the evening with that. One final note, please silence your cell phones out of respect for our panelists and for our television audience. So with that, let's get to work. First to speak tonight is Josh Eggleston, who is the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Salem. Josh, explain what that is and take it away.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Josh Eggleston. As Les said, I serve as the city's Chief Financial Officer. I'm here today to provide clarity on the city's finances, or try to, explain how we use the funds we receive, and address some of the concerns we've heard from the community. My goal is to provide you a clear picture of the $13.8 million shortfall you've been hearing about. To understand the shortfall, we need to start a little bit further back at the beginning. Where does the city get its funding? For fiscal year 2026, this budget starts July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. The city's proposed expenditure budget that was just delivered to the Budget Committee last week totals $764.2 million. The city keeps track of and is audited every year to ensure that the fund sources coming in and the specific eligible costs in 24 separate budgeted funds are spent appropriately. For example, if you pay the city for water, that is deposited into one of those funds. We pay for the improvements to pipes and people who make sure your water is clean and safe to drink, and other water infrastructure to deliver that water to you. Other examples, gas taxes are dedicated to road maintenance and transportation. Grants or voter-approved bond measures come with specific conditions for how they can be spent. For example, the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond can only be used for capital projects described in the ballot measure and not for operations. For the funds that the city can adjust fees to align with cost, services are able to be maintained. However, several funds, including the general fund, which you hear more about, have a structural imbalance. When we talk about this, we're talking about revenues growing at a slower rate than expenses. And there are two major reasons why Salem and other Oregon cities are facing a funding gap. One is rising costs, which I think all of us have experienced that, and also statewide limits on local government revenues. The $13.8 million shortfall, that's in the general fund. The general fund supports the city's core operations like public safety, municipal court, parks, libraries, code compliance, planning, and internal services that help the city function like IT, HR, legal counsel, and other facilities. After the fiscal year 2026 proposed reductions, the total general fund expenditure budget for the general fund is proposed at $195.9 million. So even though the city manages a large overall budget, over $700 million, only a portion of it is available to fund essential services like public safety, parks, and libraries. Personnel costs make up 80% of the general fund spending. The challenge is that while these costs for these services continue to rise due to inflation, labor costs, and growing demand, our revenues just simply aren't keeping pace. There's a few local government budgeting concepts that you might not be aware of, and I rarely get an opportunity to be in front of this large of audience, so I'll take advantage of it. The first is the balancing the budget. State law requires the city to adopt a balanced budget. This means we must align anticipated revenues with projected expenditures across the general fund and each individual restricted fund. Like any household or business, the city must operate within its means, making difficult choices to remain financially responsible while focusing our limited resources on the most urgent needs. Will do. The city manager proposes the budget to the budget committee in an open public process, reviews and further shapes the budget before passing it on to the city council for a public hearing and adoption. All of these conversations are available in person, streaming in real time, or to watch on YouTube. You can contribute your perspective to the conversations in person, through remote testimony, or via email. We are also grateful for the time and attention of our volunteers, like the Budget Committee, also a recent group that looked into detail at our spending called the City Efficiency Committee, a community group that reviewed our forecasting methodologies, and the City Council's Finance Committee, who is also directing our performance auditing program. We also have a Bond Oversight Committee that oversees all our bond projects. We also meet auditing standards for local governments and are governed by the state purchasing rules. And we produce a 5-year financial forecast to provide a comprehensive view of the city's long-term financial health, anticipate potential challenges, and guide strategic decision-making. As new information emerges, the forecast is updated and its outcomes may change, either for better or worse, allowing the city to adapt and respond accordingly. I also want to assure you that Salem is not alone in facing these challenges. Cities across Oregon are dealing with the same structural limitation caused by the state's property tax system. Rising costs and capped revenue growth are putting pressure on local governments everywhere. This is not unique to Salem, it's a statewide issue. We've worked hard to control costs, prioritize essential services, and make the most of the resources we have, but without additional revenue, we are facing difficult decisions about which services to continue, reduce, or eliminate. If you have been around Salem for a while, you've seen the population and calls for service increase. At the same time, the city has reduced services to match available resources. In recent years, the city has reduced more than $8 million in the general fund, both in positions and services. So even with the reductions to date and cost control measures, we are facing a need for either additional revenue or reductions in services. In closing, I want to leave you with 3 key points. The City of Salem's budget is carefully developed, managed, audited, but it's constrained by state laws and rising costs. The city is committed to a transparent process. The Budget Committee, which is made up of 9 elected officials and 9 community members, kicks off tomorrow evening. These meetings are held in the council chambers and are open to the public. You're welcome to come provide comment in person, online, or provide written materials. We do want to hear from you. Salem is not alone, and other cities are facing similar challenges. These difficult conversations are occurring across the state. Thank you for your time and being part of this important conversation.
Would you like a standing ovation?
So Josh, if people want to spend their evening hours plowing through budgets, what's a good website for them to start with?
cityofsalem.net/budget. It'll take you right there. You can get the online version of this budget book as well as the Urban Renewal Agency. That's what the Budget Committee is going to be reviewing over the next month or so.
Okay, good way to scare them, Josh. Next, we have Councilor Irvin Brown, who has spent a lot of time on the City Budget Committee. All yours, Councilor.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. Oh, let's try that again. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Ah, that's much better, much better. So thank you for being here. And again, thank you for the invitation. For those of you who have the opportunity to see me online or have a conversation with me, there's something that I really believe in. It's a part of my moral compass. And that is, you got to have some real talk. Anybody in here ever had some real talk with people in your family around the dinner table? Yep, real talk. Real talk means that you have the opportunity not only to express how you feel, because we all have feelings, but it also allows you the opportunity to express the nature of why you feel that way. And so for me, when it comes to real talk, I believe in not only just listening to someone when they have concerns or when they have high praises or accolades. I just believe in creating an atmosphere where people can come and share and be heard. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that I know for certain is this, is that every face and voice matters. And every face and voice needs to be heard. Because at the end of the day, you and I both know that there's a lot of work that we need to do. And how many of us in here really love our Salem? We do. We do. We really do. And to prove it to you, I was stuck in traffic for 15 minutes just trying to get here and then find a parking spot. So when I think about the path, one of my assignments given to me by the editor was our path. How did we get here? Look at the person beside you and say, do you know how we got here? Oh, go on, talk to him. Do you know how we got here? Thank you. So from the audience, someone said some measures 5 and 50. And you can take the opportunity to Google that right now. You're going to get all types of different information just coming your way. But those two measures, believe it or not, they started in the 90s. And those measures, they actually put a cap onto the value of our homes. In essence, there is an assessed value, and that's where it stops. Our properties today are not at real market value. So we are still living under the measures from the 90s, which means we do not have enough of our tax dollars going into the general fund. Somebody say, not enough. We do not have enough money going into our general fund. So that lays the foundation. That's how we got here. But let me give you a little bit more of our track record in the past three to 4 years. When I think about those particular measures, about like 5 years ago, I joined the Budget Committee, and I learned a lot. I studied, observed, took notes, asked questions, got a chance to walk around with this big old book to do some workouts, because obviously you can tell that it's really working. But these books are heavy, and there's a lot of material in there. So I joined the Budget Committee. And on that Budget Committee, we found out that there were going to be some, shall we say, in the red. And I know the CFO doesn't like me to use language like that, but we were going to be in the red. And we used a lot of our one-time dollars to make things happen. Well, those one-time dollars, they came from our ARPA funds, some of our relief funds right at the time of the pandemic. How many of us remember the pandemic? Yes, we do. We remember those days. So right when it came time for the pandemic, we, as a part of the Budget Committee, we got together with the previous administration, with the mayor and the city councilors. We decided at that particular time, in order to get out of this, we were going to need a payroll tax. How many of us remember that? Well, Here's the other side of it. Real talk is this. I was a part of one of those members that were a part of that team. And yes, at the end of the day, I'll be the first person to say, could we have rolled that out better? Yes. Could we have made some different changes and added more people to the room? Yes. I would say yes to that all day long. But here's something you may not hear a lot of people say, but Urban's going to tell you the truth because we call it real talk, right? And do I have your permission to talk real to you? Yeah. Perfect. I love it. Real talk says this. Had we passed the payroll tax, we would not be here tonight. Just let that set in. We wouldn't be here. But nevertheless, here we are. No pointing of fingers, no blame, because at the end of the day, there's plenty of that to go around. Say the payroll tax, it failed. We went back to the drawing board. The experts, people sitting here, people sitting out there, people watching online. We decided to bring together a revenue task force. Revenue task force came around. Here's a copy of their work. And I'm going to read a little bit to you of what they said because they were charged with helping us find ways to bring more revenue into our city or find out if we were abusing funds. The Revenue Task Force, they had several recommendations, and I'm going to read to you their recommendations when that team of experts got together. They said this: if we're going to make some changes in the city of Salem, here are some of the recommended options for you to utilize. Business license fees, franchise fee increase, urban renewal, increased frozen base, local option property tax levy, personal income tax, payment in lieu of taxes, intergovernmental agreements and entities, and tax reform restructuring. That is what that group of experts came back to us to say. You and we have a money problem. And they said one way to solve it is a levy. So even with what's happening right now, we listened to those experts. Moving on from the Revenue Task Force, a new council was sworn in. One Hoy replaced the other Hoy. It's a joke. You can laugh. It's okay. New council members came in. So new council was sworn in. And with that new council, we decided to bring together a group of people known as the efficiency team. The efficiency team, and you'll hear more about that from our CEO from the Chamber of Commerce. The efficiency team, they came together, another group of experts. These were people, some of them could be sitting out in the audience tonight. They were charged with making sure what our budget would look like. They went through Mr. CFO's budget. They went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. They were used to managing multi-million-dollar budgets. They were used to it. So when they decided to go through our books, they came back with some conclusions also. And they concluded that the city of Salem is doing more with less. And they also said there is no misappropriation of funds. Oh, yeah, you should clap to that. I like it when the home report comes back that way. So, no misappropriation of funds. And now we are here getting ready once again to do and to follow up on a recommendation that was given to us by some experts, and that's the levy. That is where we're at. And there's a lot I want to say about this levy, but I think I'll get the opportunity to actually come back and talk more about it, because I want to share with you, real talk again, what will happen if you say yes, and I'm going to tell you what will happen if you say no. Because how many of us know in here there is a consequence for all of our actions? Amen, somebody. There is a consequence. And I know for a fact, and Mr. Editor just said it, he said that what, 92,000 folks voted, right? Registered to vote. Register to vote. How many of you know that all voters don't show up? Hello, some of you are in here right now. Voting matters. And it's not my responsibility to tell you to vote yes or no. No. My sole responsibility here tonight, along with my peers, including the city councilors that are in the audience, and even on behalf of Madam Mayor, our charge to you is we want you to be an informed voter. You need to be informed. So when that ballot comes your way, you can have a conscience that's going to follow right along when you decide to vote. You need to make sure that it is a head and heart action that you are an informed voter. And tonight, before you leave here, you will have heard from the CFO, from the CEO, and from yours truly. Real talk, because we want to make sure that you are an informed voter. More to come.
Irvin, next time if you could bring a little more passion with you, that would be helpful. Next we have Tom Hoffert, CEO of the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce. Tom, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Les. I appreciate the opportunity to sit up here with Josh. I'm going to eat it, okay? It's a pleasure to sit up here with Dr. Brown and Josh, two individuals that we partner with quite often. As mentioned, my name is Tom Hoffert, and I have the opportunity to serve as CEO of the Salem Chamber. We are a 501c6, not-for-profit entity here in Salem with the purposes of business advocacy and leadership development. Our organization is made up of approximately 1,100 small businesses in Salem. 80% of our members employ 20 or less employees. And our board is represented by 25 volunteer members across every spectrum, age, culture, different industries of size, small, medium, and large, and representative of our Salem community. At the Salem Chamber, we believe in helping businesses prosper so our entire community may thrive. And business is not a contentious issue when it comes to the politics that we are in America. Everyone in this room is pulling for small businesses in Salem, and our organization is blessed to represent them and share the voice of those cutting paychecks in this community, as well as those in the private sector receiving those paychecks. I'm going to provide some background information on our organization's endorsement of the City of Salem Livability Levy, which will appear on your ballots on May 20th. The Salem Chamber has continually invested in the Salem community since our establishment in 1884. We deeply care about having a healthy local economy that supports a good quality of life for Salemites to live, work, play, and recreate here. Local businesses provide the dignity of jobs and salaries, but they also contribute greatly to the tax base that is collected by governments and contribute to the governments that you see today, whether it be Chemeketa, School District, City of Salem, Marion and Polk counties, and of course the state of Oregon. Unlike residential property taxes, commercial and business property taxes are based on the value of their business property, including their warehouses, and what's on the property, such as machinery and equipment. Every time a business expands its operations or purchases new equipment, the value of that property is increased and the subsequent amount of tax revenue increases as well. If we invest in economic development, as our local economy grows and improves, additional tax revenues are generated. The Chamber's position from inception has been one that your local businesses are an invaluable partner to the City of Salem. We seek to have Salem area viewed as a premier location to operate a small business, and this is despite operating in one of the most challenging states for business in America. In the CNBC annual poll, Oregon ranks 48th in business friendliness. Imagine the odds that our small businesses face today to operate in this state. And so an organization like us is surrounded by people that believe in bigger things. We call Salem home very proudly because there are many, many other places we could operate our business that would be much easier with less restrictions and greater revenues. We seek to have this area, as mentioned, recognized as a great place to do business. And so we support all efforts to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit by removing barriers to starting or expanding a business. And we know this will result in a successful local economy capable of providing job opportunities and support for our city services we hold dear. While economic development is a major part of our long-term budgetary solution, today the city is facing a $3.8 million budget shortfall. Upon seeing this budget shortfall deficit, the Chamber decided to walk alongside and provide our support and guidance when asked, both to our elected officials and our leaders within the City of Salem. On December 11, 2023, the Salem City Council chose to establish an alternative revenue task force with its missional goals to identify new revenue, resources, possibilities, and report back the group's work to Salem City Council. And I will hearken back a short 5 years prior. In 2018, the city did this exact exercise for alternative revenue, and the Salem Chamber was not asked to the table. It is important that business's voice was at that table in 2018, and I'd like to recognize city leadership under former Mayor Chris Hoy, under our city managers that we have served, and certainly this council for allowing the business community to be at the table. As this task force was assembled in early 2024, the Salem Chamber was asked to provide a few options of business community leaders who would be willing to dedicate their time and efforts to this volunteer service. Upon the first meeting of the Alternative Revenue Task Force, our representatives asked the committee if we could also look into possible cost-cutting and efficiency options and present those options as well to City Council. City Manager Keith Staley voiced that the task force was exclusively for new revenue options, that the City Budget Committee would be looking at efficiencies, and this revenue task force would not have that opportunity. Last winter, several small business community leaders, including 2 chamber board members, volunteered their time and joined the forecast revenue team that Dr. Brown mentioned, alongside Mayor-elect Julie Hoy, Councilor-elect Shane Matthews, city officials, and City Budget Committee members to review the budget shortfall forecast. Their strategic work effectively reduced nearly $18 million budget deficit to its current $13.8 million. Under this forecast, the city is expected to collect $4.6 million more in property taxes over the next 5 years. Seeing that shortfall would be continuing to face our community, it became very evident to our organization and our leadership that we needed to engage deeply on what next steps would be. We faced a mayoral race that was quite contentious in our community, as well as multiple city council races, and we identified that the city needed to further improve its trust building with its residents, something Dr. Brown has echoed many times. If we were going to be on a path to ask for additional dollars, our stool needed to have strong legs built on a number of key things: potential revenue, evaluation of efficiencies, and very strong trust with our community who would be voting on such a measure. After the forecast effort peeled over $4 million from the budget deficit, in partnership with the Marion and Polk Home Builders Association, the Salem Chamber issued our formal request to work with city officials and establish the City Efficiency Committee. In partnership with then City Manager Keith Staley, Josh Eggleston, and Kaylee Leinenbach with the city's Finance Service Department, we identified a 9-person volunteer committee of business people savvy in working with multi-million-dollar budgets day in and day out, and they were capable and committed to assisting in the analysis of the general fund expenditures. This committee was comprised of local business leaders who had expertise in managing large budgets. And although this effort was rather short in duration, the group volunteered their time to review the city's budget and provide their thoughtful comments on areas that they could see potential improvement. They compared budgeted amounts to actual expenditures across a few select departments, focusing on operating costs, identified potential efficiencies and resource allocations, and provided a summary of their findings to enhance community understanding and trust in the city's financial processes. Committee elected Brian Moore, CEO of Neighborly Ventures, to serve as its committee chair. Although time was limited, the committee reported that the city's budgetary deficit was created largely by outside structural problems and not much from wasteful spending. We support that finding. The report included that the city had chronic understaffing with reduced resources, but was successful in providing levels of service comparable to cities like Eugene with far less personnel. The issue that these current levels of service are not sustainable is with skyrocketing pension costs and the financial burdens of state-owned buildings whose tax-exempt status prohibit the city from collecting approximately $7 million in property taxes. State-owned properties comprise 8% of the land within Salem city limits, worth about $1.65 billion in real market value with all tax-exempt status. The Salem Chamber supports a bipartisan effort to pass the Capital District Plan. This is a legislative proposal to raise revenue from the state to offset the city's expenses for managing and supporting state government buildings. Concerning the unsustainable pensions, Committee Chair Moore specifically addressed that 80% of the city's general fund goes to staffing, and that large percentage of the cost is associated with the ballooning pension rates set by the state. Salem CFO Josh Eggleston explained this to the Salem Reporter in February, that the city of Salem will pay a rate of at least 24% of its payroll to the Public Employee Retirement Plan, better known as PERS, up from 18% the previous year. That extra expense is about $6.6 million of our general fund. On March 6th, the City Levy campaign presented our Business Advocacy Committee with presenters including Mayor Julie Hoy, Councilor Paul Tigan, Councilor Lindy Nishioka, Krishna Namburi, Salem's interim city manager, David Levy with the Salem Public Library Advisory Board, Taylor Sharman of the Salem Public Library Foundation, its executive director, and of course, Brian Moore, CEO of Neighborly Ventures and the City Efficiency Committee Chair. The Salem Chamber has been involved in assisting the city with these budgetary issues and understands the dire situation the $13.8 million deficit puts upon our city services. After many lengthy discussions with our board and our membership, the Chamber believes the passage of the city's livability levy will ensure protection for our police, fire department, and emergency services from potential funding cuts. This is our organization's central reason for advocating for the city's livability levy, maintaining public safety that is so important to each and every person in this room. If this measure passes, the levy will be 98 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, approximately costing the average Salem household $229 annually per year, and will generate $14 million in fiscal year 25-26. The levy will create a separate and dedicated fund for city parks, Center 50 Plus, and the libraries, removing these services from the general fund obligation. The Salem Chamber will continue to partner with the city for ongoing city efficiencies, and for these reasons, the Salem Chamber stands behind the City of Salem Livability Levy in 2025.
Thank you, Tom. Before we go to questions, Josh or Irvin, do you have anything that you want to add at this point to what's been said, or should we get into the questions?
Let's get into it.
All right, so we'll turn to Rachel and Joe. Let's fire away.
The first question is for CFO Josh Eggleston. Can you assure the community that if voters pass this measure, the city won't need to make reductions in the next 5 years?
No.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. No, we really can't do that. And we've been pretty clear. We've been pretty clear talking to neighborhood groups, other areas. The $14 million makes the situation much, much more manageable, but it doesn't completely resolve the problem. So the city still has work to do to resolve the much, much smaller deficit in the general fund, but it's much less likely that significant reductions would be needed in the next 5 years.
Okay. Great.
This one's for Tom Hoffert. What would you say to the small business owner who's already seen rising costs from inflation and uncertainty over tariffs on why they should support a measure that would raise their taxes further?
Yeah, great question, and certainly a conversation I've had hundreds of times over the last month or two. There becomes pivot points in communities where investment is required to maintain a semblance of what you want from your community. And remember, as much as I am trying to keep businesses here and keeps paychecks flowing, I am also trying to keep this community as an attractive place for additional businesses to someday want to locate and call home. We're fighting for a workforce here, Rachel, as well. And as we start to see the amenities in our community dip, and we start to see the public safety in our community dip, and we see the challenges that city council faces and our elected leaders, our quality of life follows that. And so our organization believes in a community that is vibrant and healthy, and this investment out of those that were proposed is the most palatable and the most swallowable for each of us as residents and businesses. Because remember, businesses also pay this. This is not, I'm Tim, the business owner, and I pay it only at home. I also pay this at my business. And our businesses in Salem, especially our local restaurants, are fighting in terrific challenges right now. And so I would ask each of you, as residents in Salem, when you make a choice to make a purchase, are you buying through Amazon and a national company, or even a multinational company? Or are you choosing someone right here in Salem that has a workforce depending on a paycheck? We choose and show our love with our wallets. And I need our community to remember the people in this room are the people that live in this community and are working at these places of business. And so I am very hopeful that if this incremental increase for our businesses and our residents pass, that we will equally be committed as residents to drive our dollars back to the very people that are supporting this community and being risk takers as business owners.
Okay, and just a reminder for the audience that if you have questions prepared or if you want to get a card to write a question, just raise your hand, and I'd ask our students to run those on up to Joe and Rachel. Next question, Joe.
So this next one is for Dr. Brown. As a city councilor, what convinced you to support increasing taxes?
What convinced me? That's easy. I knew no one was going to ride in on a white horse and save me. And I'm going to follow something that the Mr. CEO said. It is about money. At the end of the day, what we do is connected to our wallets. And so, as a city councilor, as a voter, as a person of color, public safety means a lot to me. As a veteran, I know what it's like to put on that uniform, regardless if you don't know everybody in the country that you're protecting. Because right now, how many of us know that there are people in a uniform right now all across the city, all across the state, making sure that we're safe? How many of y'all know that? Oh, yes. They're there. They're there. And not only in the state, but there are people in a uniform across the country, globally, that are on a watch right now looking out for our safety. So what convinced me is that I knew that I had to be a part of this. When I walked in here tonight, I gave an offering, almost like church. That's a joke. It was a tough crowd. I left an offering with the library folks outside. And I'm sharing that with you because it's not for an accolade, but I want you to know, as my dad would say, Mr. Frank Brown, he would say this. He would say, son, put your money where your mouth is. Mm-hmm. How many of you heard that before? Yep, exactly. If you want it, pay for it. Hello, somebody. If you want it, pay for it. It does not come free. Public safety, and I can feel this now. Public safety is not free. Let me give you just a little bit of an example. In the audience tonight, I know for a fact that Chief Gerboth is back there. He sees our fire department. He oversees that team. And 2 days ago, in the wee hours on Monday morning, there was a tragic fire on the South Salem, Ward 3. Councilor Matthews, he's here somewhere. There was a fire, total loss. Lives were okay, but they lost a pet. Now, let me share with you the data that goes with that. And this is what convinced me that I knew I had to be a part of this. Chief had to send out 16 units. Somebody say, Irvin, how many is 16 units? So glad you asked. There were 41 people on duty yesterday. 41. Out of the 41, 29 were working up that fire. Let that sit in. 29 were working the fire out of a total of 41. Real talk, had there been a fire in the northeast part of the city where I live, the response time would have been horrific. And who's to say what the outcome would have been? You see where I'm going? I'm connecting the dots to you and with you because it is not free. Somebody has to pay for it. Madam Governor has not cut a check. Hello, somebody. She hasn't cut a check, and nor is she planning to cut a check. She's not about to swoop down and save the capital city. I wish she would, but she ain't. So now you have to ask yourself, Dr. Brown, how are we going to pay for it? Look at the person sitting beside you. Look at him real quick. Some of y'all scared to look at your neighbor. That's how we're going to pay for it. When you email me my city account, right at my name and my signature, I have 3 words there. And those 3 words are this: in it together. We are in this together. Come on, somebody. We are in this together. Now, regardless, if you don't like somebody, that's between you and that person. But public safety does not care if you live on Lancaster or West Salem. Hello, somebody. Public safety doesn't care if you're brown, black, white, rich, poor, have a mama, don't have a mama, have a degree, don't have a degree. Public safety does not care. When you have a problem, problems come knocking on your door, and how many of you know that problems do not have a respect of persons? Problems show up because that's a part of life. And when you dial 911, when any of us on this stage dial 911, there is an expectation that somebody is going to show up. And if somebody is going to show up, that means we got to pay for it. We got to fix the system. And at the end of the day, we got to get people that have the appetite that want to fix it. Hello. The appetite. I'll go one step further. That means, yes, Madam Governor needs to have an appetite to help us fix it. Legislators on the left side, right side, in the middle, they need to help us fix this. Oh, yes, it's the truth. You may not like it, but it's still the truth. We got into this by legislation, and guess what? If you want to get out of it and get through it, it's going to require legislation.
All right. Well, I guess we're done for tonight. Next question.
I think this one's for Josh and maybe Councilor Brown as well. Other Oregon cities that have levies in place, like Eugene and Portland, are still facing deep budget cuts this year. What is the city's plan to avoid being right where we are now in 5 years?
That's all you.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think you have the commitment from the city council, from the city administration, to be more proactive in the future. One thing that this levy does is gives us a little bit of time. So I'm calling it, building the financial roadmap into the future. Our interim city manager might call it something different. We'll see what ends up happening. But the plan is not to come back with this same level of problem, to make it much more manageable. So by the time we hit a renewal of this potential levy, we'd have a plan in place.
And remind people, how long does this levy last, Joe?
Yeah, so local option levies, this one specifically is for 5 years.
Okay, so that means there has to be another vote. If the city wants to renew it, there'll have to be another vote, is that right?
That is correct, and what we would likely do is go after 4 years to avoid the uncertainty we've had with services this year.
Okay, great. All right, next question.
So this next one is for anybody who feels prepared to answer it. How do you expect Salem would change if the levy fails and city services are cut as a result?
Okay.
Tom, do you want to start with that? Go ahead.
Yeah, anytime you have a change in funding of this magnitude, we need to be very clear that you are going to see changes in this city. When you look at the magnitude of this and potentially having $14 million removed from this ecosystem, first of all, it's already removed. They have already begun the planning practices, and you will see that in earnest starting tomorrow night, of how you strategically look at the budget. And so, while not a sitting city councilor, I would suggest it will be very prudent and important that the budget committee brings 2 versions of the budget to Salem City Council for review. One, a budget that has this levy passing, and a second, a budget without this passing. And so you are going to see the biggest effects in people. 80% of the city's budget is paying for personnel. And I don't know if you're aware, but the school district is well over 90% personnel. We as citizens need to understand where the expenses in government are, and that is in personnel. So I will just say flatly, you will see a great reduction in people. And where do people in our city reside? They reside in libraries, police, fire, community services, all the things that come together to create a wraparound service for a city. Our city is in many places, touching many things, from maintenance of roads and parks to senior services, as you're well aware. You will see the cuts in personnel.
Do you want to take that as well? I mean, let's tell folks in plain terms, if this does not pass, how does the morning look in Salem? What changes?
And to follow Mr. CEO, a lot is going to change. And he hit the nail on the head. It is personnel. Let's say the levy passes. We can all sing and be happy, and skip through the tulips, or whatever you want to do with the tulips. Do whatever you want. It can pass, and we'll be fine for the moment. If it fails, however, if the levy fails, your beloved Salem is going to look dramatically different. Dramatically different. You think 20 hours of the library being open is bad? Imagine when we have to close it for good. You think having a place where our senior citizens can go to be seen, to be valued, to get services? Imagine if we have to close that. Imagine how your mom, your grandparents, how they would feel. Public safety matters tremendously. It matters. I said this and I'll say it again. Although public safety is not on the levy next month, it is on the levy. And I'll tell you how it's on the levy. Last year, there was an incident that took place at the library. Someone was assaulted. The staff in charge, they called 911, public safety. There were some incidents that took place at Center 50 Plus. They needed help. They called 911, public safety. And last, our parks, your beloved park. We have incidents that take place on our park consistently. A few weeks ago in Ward 5, someone was stabbed at random. When incidents happen, who do we call? 911, public safety. Parks, Center 50 Plus, our library, that foundation that is shaking right now, that foundation is called public safety. And if we don't rise to the occasion, it just won't shake. It's going to crumble. Because public safety is not free. And we really have to own it. It will not just be us up here. It will not just be our business owners. It won't just be our staff. And it won't just be the city councilor. Every single one of us in here will feel the weight of it. When you think about the police, I know we have people on mixed sides of the equation. More police, less police. Well, let me tell you this about the police. They are one of the entities that are working with less. And they still have the same number of people in uniform that they had over 15 years ago. Same number. Doing more with less. The city will look different. We know we have a homeless population right now. We have those that are unsheltered. We get that. And we have people that are looking for a place to live. We get that also. But I would tell you this. Before you can find someone a place to live, before you can get them off the street, before you can do any of those good wraparound services, public safety has to be first.
So let's turn to some real talk from the audience, and we're going to turn to audience questions now. Rachel?
Got a couple variations of the same one here, which is what is the status of the effort to get the state to pay for some of Salem's expenses?
That well, huh?
Go.
Yeah, really appreciate the question. I can start if anyone else wants to add. So you might be aware we're in a legislative session. We don't know the outcome of that legislation or those efforts. What we do know is we have a lot of pieces in place. We have a lot of people supporting the effort, bipartisan support on both sides. Our lobbyist is in the building working on this for us, so we won't know until the end of the session, but there are ongoing extreme efforts.
Is that legislation still alive? Do you know?
If this passes, it will be a Christmas tree bill at the end of the session.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so this next one is from the audience. How will the levy affect renters and anyone in low-income housing?
Sprinters?
Renters.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So the levy is on property, right? So if you're renting, it won't directly impact you. It's likely to get passed on 3-year rent, so it'll be assessed to the property owner.
Okay.
These two are on the same theme. Do you plan to present or propose a payroll tax in the future? And will there be a separate levy in 6 months to a year for police and fire?
There is no current consideration for either of those things.
And I'm just going to echo what the CFO just said. But I do want to go back to that previous question, the one that Mr. CEO answered. In regards to renters, there is something that I do understand. I do understand that we have some people, even in this particular space, that are on fixed incomes. And how many of you all know that's true? They're on fixed incomes, and there's not any more money that's coming in for them. And so when people's taxes are being raised, I get it, because for some folks, this could mean they don't have a place to stay. And so, as I said earlier, like 45 minutes ago, one of our charges is just to make sure that you are not only an informed voter, but you can make that decision. You can make that decision as a homeowner or even as a renter to know that the landowner is going to be paying for that. But at the end of the day, it does impact all of us tremendously.
Okay, so how much of the general fund is budgeted to support homelessness and shelters?
Zero.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. There is no direct funding to support homelessness or sheltering. There are some pass-through funds currently being used for the Salem Livability and Outreach Service Team, the SOS team, for cleanup in the right-of-way in city parks, but there's no direct funding dedicated to sheltering.
So to be clear, Josh, there's no funding out of the general fund for those efforts?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
What other revenue options besides raising property taxes is the city exploring to fund these services?
Really good question. We're looking at a few different options. One of the big one is that payment in lieu of taxes of the Capital District. We're also exploring stopping collection of tax increment in a few urban and rural areas, which would return those funds to the general fund, to the school district, to the county. We're looking at those as potential options. We're also looking at other potential fee structures. But the main one that we're focusing on right now is that local option levy.
Okay, the levy is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. What's the long-term solution? And how do we plan how to implement the long-term solution when the levy expires?
Just real quick, and then I'll pass it on. Apparently there's some thoughts. So really good question. I guess at a very, very high level, our property tax system is broken. So we need some comprehensive reform. I'm also a little bit of a realist in that area, so I don't think it's going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So there needs to be some other solution to bridge that gap. I will say a local option levy is one way that cities operate. So if you look at other cities, they've had local option levies in place for several decades.
An area that we need to be knowledgeable of is what is driving this cost, and that is the cost of public employment is increasingly outgrowing that of the private sector, and that is not a controversial statement, but rather a statement of fact. And so ways that if that is going to continue to occur, if we're talking realities, is I will go back to my opening statement, and that is economic opportunity in this city. That is having many more businesses open their doors, evaluating how we're using the city's land, and if we have land that is underutilized, is it not better put into the private sector where we are now taxing it, getting the revenues from new business expenditures, the paychecks that are being cut and having a community that is on a growth pattern rather than a community that is declining in size. Oregon is declining. Salem itself is not in population size. And so if we look at economic opportunities, and that is not something that city councils have historically done in this city, if we start to focus on economic opportunities within this city, we're going to have new opportunities for new revenue.
Well said.
So, Councilor, let me follow up on that question a little bit. I presume that you and city leaders are right now quite sharply focused on the current budget and the current budget crisis. Is there a mechanism that is in place now or that the council envisions to take a longer look at some of the structural issues that have been identified by the Efficiencies Committee, the Revenue Task Force, and so on? In other words, are we just going crisis to crisis? Is there any mechanism to take a longer range view?
Tough question. Short answer, yes. For those of you who may have the opportunity to watch our city council meeting last night, because we know how riveting those meetings can be, there was something that was said last night by Madam Mayor, and this is a part of her vision. It is also something that the interim city manager, Nambury, has also been a part of, the leadership team. So she said something last night, I just want to highlight it. And it's an acronym. The acronym is RECS, R-E-C-S. And the R stands for revenue. We know that we have a revenue problem. And we really got to find a way to bring more revenue into the city of Salem. And you've heard what Mr. Hofford had to say about that. That is about our businesses. At the end of the day, we do need them. And I'll be the first person to say that we have to make some decisions when it comes to big business versus small business. There's a reality with that. Like this past weekend, I like to work in my yard, and I made a decision that if I was going to go out and buy things for my yard, that I was going to go to a small business. I was going to go to a small nursery rather than going to a big one. Little things like that do matter because you want to make sure that your dollar stays here. Hello, somebody. You want to make sure it stays here because that is going to tell you how long it's going to stay here. But if we continue to shop and do things with big business, it will hurt us. He can tell you this, his experts can tell you that. That is not going to change. We have to do better with that. So revenue is the first one. The letter E, that stands for efficiency. Okay? We know that we had a team brought in here to help us look at our budget, to figure out where we can save and make some cuts. And Mr. CEO talked about that. One of the things that our city manager, Nambury, has said to me, and she said it time and time again, she says, we cannot efficiency our way out of this. We can't. We can cut here and clean up over here and move this fund and all that. All that's good, but we have gone as far as we can. So R, E, and now the CS. It's cost savings, right? Where can we save? Where can we invest? That is a part of the long-term goal. Revenue, efficiency, always being smart with our dollars. If the levy passes, we will have it will sit in a special fund where we'll have an oversight committee because that's about efficiency, right? We want to make sure that we're accountable with our dollars, with your dollars, with my dollars. And we need to do that year after year, year after year. And I would say this, and I say this unapologetically. We do need legislators and the person in the governor's office. We do need their support. Come on, somebody, we do. There's no way around it. We need legislative support. And you'll be able to hear people on a variety of different, thoughts and opinions about measures, 5 and 50. Yes, everybody's going to be on a different side of the equation. But here's one side that we'll all be on. That one side is this. How many of us know that we can do better? There you go. That is the low bar. We can do better, and I'm a firm believer that we can do better. We do have lobbyists that are helping us, and I'm a firm believer that we have to have a partnership. We got to be able to get along with people that are on the left side, right side, no side, even in the middle, whatever you want to call it. How many of us know that we need politicians that can get along with each other? Hello? We can tear down each other all day long, but we get nothing out of that. At the end of the day, it is a we thing. We are in this together. And we need a stronger partnership, not only with the governor's office, but with our legislators, our local ones, our county commissioners. Hello, somebody. We got to work at this together.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to take, this will come as a relief to you. We're going to take 2 more questions. Next question.
So this one is a 2-parter. How is this better than a payroll tax? And also, they want to know whether or not this expense is now spread over fewer people.
Now, don't fight over the microphone. Well, Josh, is there a structural difference between the two that favors one over the other?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I don't think I can offer a comment on which one is better. They're completely different structures. One is based on wages, the other is on property taxes. I think in this case, a local option levy is much more familiar. People are more used to property taxes. I think that's one benefit in this case. And I didn't quite understand the second piece.
So the way it's written here, it's a question. It appears that this expense is now spread over fewer people.
Oh, then a payroll tax?
Mm-hmm.
That's property owners instead of the entire work.
Yeah, again, it's just a completely different structure. One is based on wage earners, the other is based on property owners. So it's just, it's a mechanism of the structure.
Tom, do you maybe want to address why the chamber supported the levy and not the payroll tax, since they are so different?
Well, a payroll tax dissuades employment. It dissuades people from growing their workforce, and it affects people who are on the lowest wage structure, and it does not capture anybody who is retired. So I'm not really going to give an opinion more than I just say they're, as Josh said, extremely different mechanisms to gain dollars. And I could probably argue the employer's point, but I don't find that would be helpful. I don't know that our position was contentious when 80% of the electorate voted it down.
All right, last question.
I also just want to assure folks we're collecting all these cards, so if your question didn't get answered tonight, we will do our best to double back on it in our coverage. This is also for Tom. The chamber and its members were very involved in defeating the payroll tax. How will the chamber and members be involved in supporting this levy?
Yes, we are not an organization that sits by our side. We have a very active board of directors, and our membership is one that is engaged. For those who don't understand the structure of a chamber, you elect to be part of a chamber and you invest to be part of a chamber. So these are businesses that are active in our communities each day. I'd also like to speak to the businesses that are not a member. Our organization is working on your behalf every single day, and your voice is equally as valuable. We don't look at businesses who are not a member of a chamber as if they're not part of the Salem business community. We are all in this in the business community together. We encourage the entire business community to become active in this by displaying lawn signs, taking the opportunities to come to things like this. I have never, nor our board leadership, said no to a public speaking engagement. It is a short 3 years ago that Mayor Chris Hoy and I were standing arm in arm for a $300 million investment in our community. So the chamber is an organization that is very community thoughtful, and we realize strong communities can allow business to thrive at a higher level than a community that has had its public services decimated.
All right. Josh, Irving, Tom, our thanks to you for giving up your evening, for helping us all learn more about a complex topic that's very important. I wish you would all join me in thanking our panelists tonight. And I think we need one other round of applause, and I think that's for you, the audience. You showed up, you came, you listened. Give yourselves a hand. On behalf of this crew from the Salem Reporter, we thank each and every one of you for your attention and your interest this evening. We'll continue to report on this in depth in the coming weeks as we get close to the ballots and afterwards. We appreciate your interest. Reach out to us if you have additional questions. And with that, I bid you a good evening. Cool.
Hello, my name is Joe Cease. I'm a reporter at Salem Reporter, and we just got done with a town hall here at the Elsinore Theater in Salem, and we heard from our distinguished panel, City CFO Josh Eggleston, City Councilor Irvin Brown, and Tom Hoffert, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, and we just asked them some questions, both that we came up with and also questions from the audience regarding the 5-year operations levy that will be on the ballot in May to help pay for city services such as the library, Center 50 Plus, and Parks and Recreation. We had a pretty full house today, it looked like, and we got some questions answered, and I feel like Dr. Brown had a lot of passion, brought a lot of passion tonight, and it was a great event.
Yeah, I'm Rachel Alexander, Salem Reporter's managing editor. One of the core themes that our panelists touched on was public safety. Even though the levy money will be earmarked for the library, parks, and the senior center community services, that's going to free up city money in the general fund to make sure that police and fire aren't cut in future years. We also got quite a few audience questions that we'll continue to shape our coverage around, and we'll be bringing you more updates after the city's budget committee meeting on Wednesday the 16th. So stay tuned to that. You can always see our latest coverage at salemreporter.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Mark.